Hello, my name's Nick Abrahams, and today I'm going to take you on a hero's journey through your very own data breach. So why is it relevant to be talking about data breaches? Well, the reality is that most organisations have suffered some form of data breach, and what we have seen during the COVID time is that the incidence of particularly ransomware attacks have increased dramatically. It's also important to note that data breaches are causing companies all sorts of problems. Not only are they having their systems shut down for significant periods of time, but also it's causing terrible impact to reputation. And frankly, we're seeing quite a lot of impact on share price and also directors being moved aside as a result of poor cyber hygiene within organisations. So it is very important to be aware of what to do if your organisation does in fact suffer a data breach. And that's what the journey is about today. So we're using the structure of the hero's journey, which is actually a very common screenwriter's structure, which is used in many Hollywood films. So if we look at The Lion King, Harry Potter, and the very first to use this structure was in fact Star Wars. So we're going to take you on a journey a little bit like Luke Skywalker's journey in the original Star Wars. So are you ready to journey into the dark world of cyber breach? Here we go. Unfortunately, we are not in a period far, far away, or in a galaxy far, far away. In fact, it's next Friday and it's in your office. We have a data breach. So part one of the hero's journey is the call to action. And you may recall in Star Wars, that was where Luke was just a quiet little farm boy, and then all of a sudden he found R2-D2 and he saw the clip of Princess Leia. And so that was the call to adventure. Similarly for you. It's Friday, it's your office, and during the day, the systems start to run worse. They're getting locked up, people aren't being able to access files, the email isn't working, people don't know what's happening. There's a lot of concern and confusion, and it's escalated up to you. Some people are struggling with this quite a bit actually, and taking matters into their own hands. And then later on Friday evening, around 11 p.m, into your Gmail account comes this. This is a ransomware demand. This is a real one. This is what they look like. They're all different, of course, but this is a real one. And so they're actually quite nicely worded, because what we've seen with ransomware providers is they're actually quite well organised these days. They have a lot of information on them, so it tells you what time you've got to pay the ransom, and when your files will be lost. Tells you what you need to pay, and so generally it's payment by Bitcoin, which is not traceable. And then very helpfully, they do have the contact us and a help desk function if you are struggling. So it's really quite an industry these days. If we look at ransomware, in Australia we have the highest rate of ransomware attacks in the world. And what happens in a ransomware attack is that the ransomware finds its way into your system somehow, possibly through a phishing email, possibly some other way, and all of your systems get encrypted. All of your data is encrypted, so you can't use it. In this case, your ransomware perpetrator is Dark Vader. Now, what we hope for with ransomware attackers is you hope they're actually good, because if they're decent, there's a chance that if you paid the ransom, you could actually get your files back. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And with this particular ransomware, and this is a very common structure, you need to pay the ransom in 3 days or the price doubles. And if you don't pay in 7 days, your files are gone forever. So much in the way of Luke going into his new world, this is your new world, the cyber world, and frankly, the old rules do not apply in this world. Now, on your journey into the data breach world, you, like Luke Skywalker will have a mentor. Luke Skywalker had Obi-Wan Kenobi. And you have your mentor for this data breach hero's journey. Well, hello, I'm your mentor. What, you're expecting Alec Guinness or Ewan McGregor? If Obi-Wan Kenobi wore sequins, I imagine this is how he would look. Anyway, not much you can do about it, as I'm your mentor on this journey. Now, let's get started. Hopefully your company has a data breach protocol document. Ideally, you would have rehearsed this protocol at least twice a year. If you don't have a data breach protocol document, you should make it a priority to get one immediately after this. But for the sake of this sim, let's assume you have one. And your data breach protocol tells you need to address 3 issues immediately. First, do you have cyber insurance? 2, you need to appoint a breach coach and IT security company. And 3, you need to think about who you should notify. Let's go back. Number 1, do you have cyber insurance? If you do, then you should definitely notify them, as if you don't, it may void your claim. In this journey, we'll just assume you don't have cyber insurance, but you should definitely consider getting some. Second, appointing a breach coach and IT security consultant is important when dealing with data breach to protect your organisation as much as possible from the impact of potential litigation. Based on our experience with data breach litigation in the US, we recommend that you engage a lawyer first to manage that data breach. These lawyers are called your breach coach. The lawyer then engages the IT security consultants who investigate what has happened and help you through the journey. It's highly unlikely that your existing IT team have the necessary security skills required in a ransomware situation. I had a matter once where the victim organisation decided to continue using their IT security team rather than engaging a specialist outsourced security team. The existing team decided to get around the encryption by loading files from the backups. Unfortunately for them, the perpetrator saw what was happening and promptly encrypted all the backups as well. Not a great outcome. So please, unless your internal team is very, very talented, consider using an external IT security consultant. The benefit of your lawyer engaging the external consultant directly is it means it's very likely that that security consultant's reports will be covered by what's called legal professional privilege. And so this means they may not be required to be produced to the other side if you are ever sued as a result of this data breach. It's really, really worth considering. And today, I'm going to be your breach coach. Lucky, lucky. I know you're thinking, dodgy looking breach coach. Well, you'll have to look beyond the sequence. I can help. The third issue to consider under your data breach protocol is who you should notify. You should definitely notify the Australian Cyber Security Centre. So this is a government organisation. Maybe that they can give you some information about the perpetrator, Darth Vader, and possible clues as to how their particular form of encryption works. That is, if they've come across Darth Vader's encryption before. The next key issue to consider is your obligation under privacy law to notify people whose data has been compromised. You need to analyse the breach to see whether anyone's personal information has been taken or disclosed in some way. Personal information is broadly defined at law, very, very wide. It includes any information that relates to a person. Maybe information that's more on the benign side, a name, address, phone number, but on the more serious side could include tax file number, credit card details, bank account details, or even in some cases health-related information. You have 30 days to decide if you need to notify someone. So the clock's ticking, and you should ask your security consultant to come back with a report on what personal information has been impacted by the ransomware attack. This will be key to determining whether you have to notify anyone. On this front, I should note that it used to be that ransomware attacks did not access personal information. or have they just locked up people's systems? However, in recent cases I've been involved with, the ransomware perpetrator has not only locked up the systems, but they've also extracted files. These files are then made available on portal sites, and the perpetrator threatens to make those sites open to the public unless the ransom is paid. This makes the victim organisation all the more likely to pay. There's the double threat of you've got your locked up systems, but also the public shaming and potential privacy law liabilities should that personal information be made public. Well, that's it for me. Off you go on your journey, and good luck. Part 3 of the hero's journey is the crossing of the threshold. So in Star Wars, this was where Luke went into his new world and he met Han Solo and the team, and that is what you're looking at now, your new world. It's Saturday, it's 8 a.m. You have called your executive team to come in on a Saturday morning to meet up to try to solve this issue of the ransomware attack. And as you can see, the team are super excited to be in on a Saturday morning. Now the question is whether you should contact your CEO, Terry Towling. Terry is kind of a stressed individual and has taken the weekend off to go to a meditation retreat. You're a little bit concerned that Terry finds it difficult to unwind at the best of times, and so you decide to just try to push through, see if you can solve this before getting Terry involved. Now, your data breach protocol tells you that you have an agreed relationship with an IT security company. And so you call that IT security company Millennium Forensics. And they arrive at hyperspeed. And so here is the happy people from Millennium Forensics. Driven by the joy of hourly rate payments, they are turning up to help you out with your forensic analysis. You set the Millennium Forensics team to work and agree to meet with them again in 24 hours. All the while you work together with your team to see how you can keep your business up and running. 24-hour passes, it's Sunday, how time flies. It's Sunday, 8 a.m. and the team from Millennium Forensics are here and ready, looking crisp and sharp as usual, and they tell you that the systems are encrypted. They've tried what's known as brute force decryption, not working. The systems are down. It's highly likely you won't be able to break the encryption. The email's down. What are you going to do? At this time, it's time to call Terry back from his meditation retreat and see what he thinks we should do. Terry gets on the phone. He makes a call. He says, well, a Bitcoin ransom. Well, why don't we pay? Someone says, well, Terry, can you actually pay a ransom? Doesn't someone go to jail if you pay a ransom? Oh, you're back again. Oh, that Obi-Wan Kenobi has some of the best TikToks. Now, you want to know about the paying ransom. It's a very delicate issue for most organisations. Often much will depend on whether the values of the organisation will allow it to actually pay a ransom. At its core, as unpleasant as it is possible to pay a ransom and not be in breach of the law. However, you should take some legal advice before paying any ransom. Certainly, some companies do pay ransom and the files get decrypted as promised. Other times, the ransom gets paid and the files are only partially decrypted or not decrypted at all. It really depends on how sophisticated and capable the perpetrator is. Your IT security consultant will have a view on the best way to go. If a ransom is paid, there will be a proof of life style process whereby the hacker will be tested to see if they can actually decrypt some files before the money is paid over. The decision to pay ransom is also made more difficult if you're a publicly listed company. You should definitely get some advice in that case. So, up to you. Pay the ransom or not. That's quite a decision. Now I'm back to Obi's TikToks. So Terry takes on board lawyer Nick's advice, and a decision is made not to pay the ransom. But the question is, who should you notify? Your business isn't running. Do you notify customers? It's very difficult. Customers and suppliers, not right yet. What about employees? They're already wondering what's going on. A decision is made to at least explain something to them. We've got a system problem with them. What about regulators? Well, as we know, we're a ticking clock, 30 days before we need to notify at least the OAIC. The media, certainly not at this stage. Investors and shareholders, let's see how it pans out. But what about the board? Yeah, a decision is made that we need to bring the board into the tent on this data breach. And so a snap board meeting is called Sunday night, 6 p.m. And here is the board, one of the most perfectly diverse in terms of gender and race. So it's a fine board. They get together to talk about the issues. And what do we tell the board? You're at the board. Right. Well, look, most boards are very focused on cyber risks these days. There is a great concern at the potential for cyber breaches to impact an organisation's ability to operate, as well as its reputation and share price. There's also a growing concern from boards that they could face some form of personal liability for losses as a result of cyber breach. We know that the share price of companies hit by a cyber attack can drop by 10 to 20% or even more. If there was such a share price drop, it might be possible for a group of aggrieved shareholders to bring an action against the company, perhaps and/or the directors, for some form of dereliction of duties to keep proper cyber hygiene. There has not been such a claim in Australia so far, but there have been claims like this in the US. So boards should be very focused on cyber risk. This would normally mean that cyber is identified as a priority in the risk register and as a regular subject for the Audit and Risk Committee. Third parties should be brought in to the organisation regularly to ensure that cyber risk is being adequately addressed within the organisation. This might include penetration testing or cyber resilience testing of processes and policies of the sort that I understand Norton Rose Fulbright carries out. In a live breach situation like this, it is critical that the board is comfortable that the breach is being appropriately managed, both at the practical technical level, but also that the company is fulfilling all of its legal obligations regarding notifications, etc. we talked about before. So back to the journey for you. So on that cheery note, the board meeting ends, thankfully, and you go home to go to sleep. It's not a great sleep, frankly. It's very sporadic because you just don't know what Monday is going to bring. Ring, ring, it's Monday, 8 a.m. and time to check in with the happy, shiny people from Millennium Forensics. And what do they have to tell you? Well, what they've found is that it's highly likely that the malware that created the ransomware, it got into your organisation via, of all people, your air conditioning partner. The organisation that does your air conditioning, actually, they used some of the credentials that have been given to the air conditioning people and used those credentials to actually get deeper into your organisation. They also found that there's been a significant amount of personal information that has been compromised. They found that the ransomware, the Dark Vader, has taken a copy of all of the employees' data files, also taken a copy of 7,000 customer files, and that had the name of the customer, the contact details of the customer, and importantly, it had the CRM details of the customer, which has a whole range of information about those customers. Might be payment history, might be their family members' names, might be what they like to do for sport, maybe even has some health data. It's just information that the sales team have put into the CRM. So quite an extensive array of personal information. And then also, annoyingly, there's some unsolicited personal information about 500 potential customers. They're not even customers yet. And it made its way into your system in a file that came from a distribution partner. And it has a whole range of information about potential customers. And so unsolicited personal information is subject to the 4th Australian privacy principle. What do you do? Hello, yeah, I've got to go. They're back. Okay, I don't know, I'm just trying to pay the bills, doing some hero's journey on data breach. So the hacker got in via your air conditioning vendor. Not as bizarre as it might seem. A few years ago, a hacker accessed the payment accounts of 41 million customers of Target in the US. The hacker got in via Target's air conditioning vendor. We see many breaches occurring as a result of poor security in the practices of the organisation's vendors. Now, up until a few years ago, it was something of a defence to be able to say, it wasn't our fault. It was the vendor's poor security. However, the law is very clear now that an organisation is responsible for the actions of its vendor. In a recent matter I was involved in, the OAIC praised my client for their excellent cybersecurity practices, but criticised them for not ensuring their vendors had appropriate cybersecurity practices. This means that for any vendor who could have access to any personal information in your system, you need to have a robust information security agreement with them. And you need now to monitor their compliance with this pretty regularly, potentially even as frequently as some form of quarterly audits. The law is that strict. Now, the next question is whether the personal information that has been compromised is sufficient to trigger a legal obligation for you to notify those people. So let's look at the data that's been compromised. Let's start with the employee records. Now, in Australia, we're unique in the world in that employee records are exempt from the Privacy Act. Therefore, there is no obligation under the Privacy Act to notify the employees that their data has been breached. You should, however, consider what the impact will be on the employees if they ultimately find out that their information has been compromised and you have not told them. Many organisations do choose to notify their employees when their records have been compromised, even though there's not really a legal obligation to do so. So it's an important thing to manage your employee relationship carefully here. Now, with the customer records, it's highly likely that there will be a need to notify those customers of the breach. The test under the Privacy Act is that an individual needs to be notified about a breach of their personal information if the data breach is likely to cause serious harm. As to what is likely to cause serious harm, it is possible that the information in the CRM system could cause the customer serious harm. For example, if the information is that they're a late payer, this could impact their ability to get credit in the future because their reputation's been impacted. So I think you should notify both the individuals and also the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. Now, the third one is a tricky one, the unsolicited information about potential customers that came in via a distribution partner. Seems like you didn't even really know you had this. But this is covered by the 4th Australian privacy principle, which says you must destroy any unsolicited personal information that you receive. So these people should be notified that their information has been compromised. Also, you should ultimately take steps to destroy that information as required by the 4th APP. Welcome back to part 4 of the hero's journey, approaching the innermost cave and the ordeal. And you may recall in Star Wars, this was where Luke and the team were caught on the Death Star and they had to fight their way out, the big ordeal. And so, your big ordeal will start with considering notification to the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. And for all relevant purposes, the person who heads up that organisation is Angeline Falk, who's the Australian Privacy Commissioner. So you think you have to notify the OAIC, and you also need to notify customers. And the important thing to recognise when you notify customers is that you have to get together a proper form of the notice, and that's quite difficult because you don't want to scare people, but equally you need to be quite specific around the information that has been taken. You also need to have a third-party provider generally who's able to do that mail out and can manage the open rates and also responses to those emails, because 7,000 is a lot of emails. Often you'll also need a call centre to deal with the phone calls from people who aren't happy to hear that their information has been compromised. And so a decision is made that you'll take about 7 days to do this, once you get all of the information together. And the question is to also put together a PR strategy. And luckily enough, you've got one of the best in the business. You've got Bevan in your PR team. And Bevan says, don't worry about it, I'll work on a PR strategy. And then moments later, you receive this voicemail.
Hi, this is Chris Reason from 7 News. I understand that you've had a data breach and I'm interested to talk to somebody there about it.
So Chris Reason, noted reporter, has gotten wind of your data breach. So is this time to throw out the idea of, it's going to be 7 days until we need to notify, and let's take some time to develop a PR strategy? You talk to Bevan. Bevan, what do you think? Bevan says, don't worry about it. I know Chris. I'll put this to bed and we'll release in our own good time. You get another voicemail.
This is Chris Reason from 7 News again. I left a message earlier about a data breach. I'm proposing to go with the story on the 6 p.m. news, so it'd be great if somebody could call me back, please.
Okay, so Chris is going on the 6 o'clock news. You are not going to have the 7 days to wait to get everything right. You are going to have to go straight away. And the critical thing for any data breach is, if it's ever going to go public, please, what you must remember is let the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner know about that data breach, because the very first person that the journos call when there's a data breach made public is the OAIC. So make sure you contact the OAIC. And so you do that, you send out that notice to the OAIC, you've covered that. The next question is, who on your team is going to talk to the press about this issue? And so you put it out to your trusted colleagues. Who would like to talk to the press? No one's super excited about talking to the press on this, and so you say, all right, I'll do it. Strangely enough, the team seems to be very enthusiastic about you embracing that opportunity. And so you talk to the press. We now enter part 5 of the hero's journey, known as the road back and the big change. And so this, in Star Wars, was when Luke and the rebels attacked the Death Star. And Luke made the impossible shot that destroyed the Death Star. And now this is your road back. It's 1 month later. The ransom hasn't been paid. You decide not to pay it. The Millennium Forensics team rebuilt the systems from backups, and business is up and running. Not as well as it was, but it's going okay. All customers whose information was breached have been notified, and approximately 5% responded, and that was dealt with by escalation. And we find that that's roughly the number of people who get concerned about their data being breached. It's only, it's around the 5% mark, generally speaking. As an organisation, you're doing an information governance review The board has insisted on it to make sure that you have robust and crisp data privacy handling practices. And you're doing that with Norton Rose Fulbright. So congratulations and thank you very much. Lovely to have you as a new client. And then it comes to the negotiations with the Privacy Commissioner. Now, the Privacy Commissioner is very focused in these situations on getting enforceable undertakings from you as an organisation. Now, what that means is, of course, that you will be obliged by law to do whatever is in the undertaking. It's a very detailed and very expensive proposition if you have an enforceable undertaking. It can run into the millions and millions of dollars. And so you are negotiating with the Privacy Commissioner, together with your lawyers, to hopefully not get an enforceable undertaking. The negotiations are on a razor's edge. You're like Luke when he's in that channel of the Death Star. And all of a sudden, your OAIC case manager says, well, if you know so much about privacy now, what do you do with unsolicited data? You freeze. Remember, the unsolicited information about potential customers that came in via a distribution partner, this is covered by the 4th Australian Privacy Principle, which says you must destroy unsolicited personal information that you receive. Remember, Jedi, the 4th will always be with you. Always. And so, the way it all ends happily is in the discussions with the OAIC, you do remember the 4th. It was always with you. The OAIC is delighted with your knowledge of privacy and decide that no penalties or enforceable undertakings are appropriate. It is a fantastic outcome. And so we enter the final part of the hero's journey, the mastery of the problem. And so you may recall in Star Wars, this was where Luke and the team had the big ceremony and they were presented to everyone. There was much rejoicing and there were Wookiee hugs all around. Well, in your world, of course, there can't be Wookiee hugs because the HR team wouldn't be excited about that. But what does happen is you are given a new title. In addition to your existing workload, you're made the Chief Privacy Officer and you receive a very significant salary increase. Congratulations. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on Data Breach, A Hero's Journey. And I wish you all the very best into the future, whatever it may hold. Thank you.